I'm here with Canadian Member of Parliament Charlie Angus. Charlie, last week, Donald Trump backed down. He was trying to bully Canada. He imposed the tariffs. The American markets started to crash. Then Donald Trump withdrew the tariffs. Canada didn't budge. Canada still has retaliatory tariffs on right now. Charlie, what's your message to Donald Trump and his regime who may be watching this now?
Well, Donald, it's become really clear after 60 some days of your chaos. You ripped up your European treaties. You sold out the people of Ukraine. You've acted in a disgraceful manner towards our allies. You're running a chainsaw through American democracy. But you made it clear that Canada is your number one enemy, your next door neighbors. So here's the thing. You're threatening us with tariffs. You're going to bring them in. You're going to bring us to our knees. And then you start panicking because we don't back down. And now you're trying to hem and haw and change, what you said just, a couple of days ago. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Until you bring all the tariffs off, until you stop harassing us and threatening our border, the punishment is going to keep coming from Canada, because we realize right now that Canada has become the number one line of resistance to you and your regime. So since you've backtracked, we've upped the ante. Whether it's going to be energy exports, whether it's critical minerals, Canada will not back down at this point. So you need to do a rethink, because this is not going to work well for you.
Charlie, you talked about in previous interviews how the Canadian people were prepared if Donald Trump imposed tariffs, that they understood it could be tough, but they were ready for it. And you said, what I'm warning the Americans, though, is that you aren't prepared. You aren't being told the truth about tariffs, and the markets are going to crash. Do you feel that what you said back then when you and I started talking a few months ago now seems to be pretty prescient, doesn't it?
Well, we talked on a previous show about what will happen in Ottawa, and within 4 days, Toledo and Lansing, Bowling Green will start going down. And the day after the tariffs were announced, he immediately backed down on auto. Why wasn't he taking advice from the big automakers in the first place of the chaos that he would cause? Now in agriculture, it's going to be another big area with $73 billion shared trade. This is a totally integrated market. And Donald promised lower grocery prices in his first 100 days. Americans, like Canadians, have already seen the shocks of inflation, the shocks of post-COVID. Once he starts messing with that market and he's saying some things in CUSMA are protected and other things aren't, nobody knows. It's creating uncertainty, and it's making it very difficult for suppliers on both sides of the border. So I think what American farmers are waking up to is the fact that Canadians are no longer buying their products. We're just not going to participate in this abusive relationship. You threaten us, we don't buy your products. How about that?
What are you seeing in Canada right now? You and I had previously talked about Canada being united. It seems that the kind of Canadian spirit has only solidified since we last talked. And it seems, when I look at it, I go, how could a nation be even any more united? And except for a few stragglers here and there, seems to be pretty united. What's your take on the ground?
I think, to be honest, when it started, we were determined, but we were frightened. Because we knew we were going to be in for a real big fight ahead of us, and it would cost a lot. And I remember I got a beautiful message from a former section leader, Canadian soldier who'd been in Afghanistan, who said to me, I kept telling my guys and my gals, and don't be afraid of what's to come. Trust each other and you'll be fine. That was the feeling then. Now there's a real different feeling, which is a sense of determination and real unprecedented pride. We had massive rallies just yesterday in Quebec. They call themselves the Mothers at the Front outside the American consulate on International Women's Day. I can't keep up with the amount of songs that are being written about Canada right now. It seems that, we're all in the trench together, and we're all having a great Canadian party. People are really determined to do this and do this in a right way, and do this kind of joyfully and defiantly, because let's face it, Trump, JD Vance and MAGA and Elon Musk, they're creepy people. You don't want them as neighbors. And we like the people that we've got here. So there's a real transformation happening of solidifying the resistance, people getting stronger in it, and people saying, okay, now let's go to the next step. And that's going to be the pressure on our political leaders to be willing to up the ante rather than to backtrack.
Because, Charlie, these creepy people, the Musks, the J.D. Vance, the Trumps, the Stephen Millers, I mean, you in Canada, I guess, are fortunate in the sense that you are getting a preview from the ghost of Christmas past telling you what the ghost of Christmas future could actually look like if you went down a Maple MAGA road. You'll have entities like Doge destroying the government, ripping away healthcare, ripping away all of the hard-fought rights and freedoms, right? So you can kind of see that, and I think the public sentiment is changing as well. You know, this Maple MAGA, which prided itself, the kind of right-wing Pierre Poilievres and people like that, on going on the right-wing podcasts like Jordan Peterson and spewing the exact same types of rhetoric we saw here. There's been a big change in that, and that may be their undoing. What do you think?
Well, I think I may have to thank Donald Trump for one thing, which is to really show us what was in store for us, because MAGA Maple was ascendant. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have run on this, the politics of snide and cynicism and degrading their opponents. And Canadians were, I think, unsure, they were tired, they were cranky, and it was working. And so here's an example. Pierre Poilievre's been in Parliament for 20 some years. He's never had a real job outside being a political attack dog. And the only time I ever remember Pierre Poilievre ever bringing forward legislation was his promise to get rid of vaccine mandates, that he was going to stand up for people's right not to get vaccinated. Well, now we see RFK Jr. and the chaos he's causing and the measles outbreaks, and Canadians are saying, that is not good public policy. That's the policy of an ideological idiot. And so then we look at MAGA Maple here in Canada and we say, is that what we were in store for if we voted for this ideology, this kind of constant snide, mean negativity? No, we don't want that. So I'm not saying we're out of the woods yet, but it certainly made it much more difficult for the MAGA force, which was getting pretty strong here, to actually hold its own now, because people can see what Donald Trump has done. They can see what his ideologues are doing. And we realize that democracy has to do better than go to the lowest common knuckle-dragging denominator.
One of the things we've seen too, a lot of American corporations, especially those in the booze-related industry, are saying, you know what, these retaliatory tariffs are harmful. But what's even worse is the fact that in Canada, they're taking off the booze from the shelves. They're removing it. People are boycotting not just booze, but all American products. Canadians have canceled their trips to the United States. And that's a little bit of a lagging indicator, but the fact that American markets are tanking already, once we see, I think, the impact of the Canadian boycotts in March, April, May, and beyond, I mean, you're talking about tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. I think tourism, hundreds of billions of dollars would normally take place. So what are you seeing with the boycott? Is the boycotts growing, weakening, staying about the same? What are you seeing?
The boycott is so much in force now. It is something that everyone is engaged in. And I read a really interesting fact that they said, you know, all it takes is about 6 weeks of changing your buying habits to change them forever. I know that Jack Daniels was getting whiny that we didn't just impose a tariff, we took it off the shelves. No American booze in any of our liquor outlets. And, you know, my region, Ontario, is the biggest purchaser of booze in the world. Not sign perhaps on people of Ontario, but we buy a lot of Kentucky products, Tennessee products. We're not buying it. And even if they put it back on the shelf, people aren't buying. And a really interesting statistic I saw was that flights to the US in February were down 40%. Now, they talked in January about a 10% drop causing, 15,000 jobs right off the top. A 40% drop is extraordinary. And then you add to that the fact that February is a really, really cold month in Canada. People love going south to the US, and they're not. They're going either to Mexico or they're staying home to do tours in the summer through Canada. So this is having a huge effect. And this is the power of the boycott. The boycott will start putting pressure on the governors. It'll put pressure on red state and blue state legislators to start standing up and saying, this is an insane thing. Why would the United States consider its number one enemy in the world to be not China, not North Korea, not Vladimir Putin, but their next door neighbors in Canada with an integrated market, which is the most successful marketing arrangement in the world today? Why would they blow that up? That's something Donald Trump is going to have to explain to the American people very soon.
Well, it's either the height of negligence or seeming more as Donald Trump moves closer or is already moving the nation to the axis of evil. It feels intentional, wanton, malicious about why you would go and do that if you actually want to inflict harm. Charlie, your final message right now to the Trump regime as we start another week with Canada staying strong and Donald Trump and his regime flailing. Your final message.
Well, Donald, we know the ideology behind MAGA, that you believed you could create an American empire. You could just plunder resources that didn't belong to you. You could rip up treaties like the Border Treaty, like the Great Lakes Treaty. You could act like a gangster state. And you guys were all feeling pretty bullish doing it. But it was all predicated on the notion that Canada would collapse. And then when we didn't, you got confused. And then so you huffed and puffed and threatened even higher tariffs. And then we said, we'll go higher and we'll go higher still. This is the thing that you, Donald, wasn't expecting. And so now you're going to have to rethink this. If the number one source of resistance to your regime right now are the people of Canada, you're in big trouble because you don't know how Canadians are when we go from being nice to going to the point that you're going to pay a price. So here's the thing, Donald. If you want to go all the way, we're already there. We know we are going all the way, but you told us we don't have the right to even have a country. And when you say that, Donald, well, as we say in Canada, that's when we drop the gloves. That's when we go over the boards, and that's when we go elbows up. And that's the slogan of this movement, elbows up, right in your face, Donald. So make a decision. Where are you going to go with this?
Member of Parliament, Charlie Angus, and of course, a Midas Mighty favorite. Great to have you on.
Thanks so much.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers. Help us up.